Hi everybody, I'm Ryan. Today we're going to talk about red-black scam, and I long ago did a deck tech on this video, but there have been a lot of changes and the list has been pretty dramatically streamlined since then, and it going from like a decent tier 2 deck to the best deck in Modern has happened. So we're going to redo that deck tech with the new red-black scam stock list. We're going to be going over card choices, what cards are for, normal play patterns of the deck, good hands of the deck, what you're looking for, all of that stuff. So without further ado, let's jump into it. This is my red-black scam deck, also known as red-black evoke. Also known as red-black evoke if you're part of the Wizards of the Coast coverage team, or red-black mid-range if you're MTG Goldfish for some reason. But the point of this deck is sort of scamming your opponent out of the game. You're playing a bunch of cards that can just win on their own, or are extremely, extremely annoying to play against, and because of that, you can kind of pull yourself ahead. Now, we're going to be going over the scams, I guess, of the deck. These are play patterns that you're looking for and hands that you're looking for. And then we're going to talk about the red-black mid-range side of the deck. So first off, the scams of the deck are Grief and/or Fury alongside one of these Undying effects. Not Dead After All, Undying Evil. Some decks play Feign Death and whatnot. And the idea is the best hand of the deck is Evoking a Grief, where you can cast it for free, exiling a black card from your hand, enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals their hand, you choose a non-land card from it, that player discards that card. It's like a Thoughtseize. You stack these triggers, because Evoke is an enter the battlefield trigger, you stack these triggers so that Evoke is underneath the Thoughtseize. The reason for that is in case they have a removal spell or something in response to it, they have to do it before the Thoughtseize, and then you can just like cast one of these effects in response. But normally what happens is you are able to take that card out of their hand, effectively Thoughtseize them, preferably take one piece of interaction with your combo out of the hand. Then in response to the Evoke trigger, cast Not Dead After All or Undying Evil. Grief goes to the graveyard and comes back as a 4/3 menace creature, trigger the Thoughtseize effect again, take the next best card out of their hand. And now you have taken two of the best cards out of your opponent's hand, and you have a 4/3 menace for a 3-card cost, the third card being the black card that you exile with Grief. Now, the other scam that's involved, and this is a little bit sketchier because you don't get to take removal spells out of your opponent's hand, but is a lot more powerful if they don't have any interaction with it, is doing the same thing but with Fury. And really, unless they played a 1-drop and you're on the draw, and then the Fury scam is even worse if you're on the draw, you just end up with a 4/4 double striker on turn 1, which sometimes is enough, which is awesome. That's the second scam. The third scam is a little less complex. Hi, kitty. This is Misha. Hi, Misha. The third scam is a little less complex, is Regavan. Regavan effectively says Death Touch to players. Whenever dealing combat damage to a player, create a treasure token, exile on top card of that player's library until end of turn, you can cast that card. It just puts you ahead so many cards, puts you ahead so much mana. And it being a 2-power 1-drop is extremely powerful. You can do some really powerful hands where you cast a turn 1 Regavan, turn 2 attack with Regavan, get a 3rd mana, doesn't matter what you get off your opponent's deck, and then cast a turn 2 Blood Moon or turn 2 Fable of Mirror Breaker, something disgusting like that. Speaking of, that's a secondary scam off of Regavan is that turn 2 Blood Moon, which is kind of a just win button against a lot of decks, or just casting Blood Moon in general is kind of a scam. Orcish Bowmasters against certain decks, especially one-ring decks, is extremely powerful. And Dauthi Voidwalker has a lot of really interesting interactions, being a 2-mana 3/2 with Shadow, where if a card would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead with a Void counter on it. So we have main deck Graveyard Hate, which is very powerful. And we can tap it and sacrifice Dauthi Voidwalker to choose an exiled card an opponent owns with a Void counter on it. You can play it this turn without paying its mana cost. Now, there's a lot of really neat interactions you can do with this, things like counter magic, or casting Dauthi Voidwalker and then either griefing or Thoughtseizing like a payoff out of your opponent's hand, like Archon of Cruelty or a Tron payoff or something like that, and then casting it for free with Dauthi Voidwalker. It's essentially a 3/2 unblockable creature that is main deck Graveyard Hate that you can cash in for a better card whenever you wish. So that's the scam side of the deck. But then there's also this like red-black mid-range side of the deck where you're just casting really powerful cards in Grief and Fury and Orcish Bowmaster and Dauthi Voidwalker and Regavan, and then backing it up with really powerful removal and Terminate and Lightning Bolt, and then like hand destruction like a normal black mid-range deck in Modern, like in Thoughtseize. Have our opponent reveal their hand, choose an on-land card from it, and they discard that card, and then we lose 2 life. And then the all-powerful Fabled Mirror Breaker that is essentially a 3-for-1 that if we get value off all 3 chapters of, we can just pull ahead extremely dramatically. where the first chapter we get a 2/2 red goblin shaman creature token. Whenever this creature attacks, create treasure token. Second chapter, discard up to 2 cards. If you do, draw that many cards. And third chapter, exile this saga, then return to the battlefield transformed under your owner's control. And it turns into a reflection of Kiki-Jiki, which is a 2/2. But we can tap it and pay 1 to create a token that's a copy of another target non-legendary creature you control, except it has haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. And there's a lot of fun stuff you can do with the flip side of Fable. If you have 2 reflection of Kiki-Jikis during your opponent's end step, you can copy the reflection, get another 2/2 with that new reflection, copy the reflection, get another 2/2, etc., etc. And then go to your turn, and because it says at the beginning of the next end step their sacrifice, you actually get all these 2/2s with haste during your turn. You can do things like copy Dothy Voidwalker and then use that new Dothy Voidwalker to cast something with a void counter on it, which is very powerful. You can use it to copy Orcish Bowmasters in response to your opponent drawing a card, or even have an extra Grief or Fury. And remember, Evoke is a trigger, so you can evoke and then copy in response to the evoke and get another one of these triggers. A really fun thing that happened to me the other day is I had my opponent on 0 cards and a flipped reflection of Kiki-Jiki and a Grief on the battlefield, and I was attacking with my Grief, but instead of copying Grief every turn, I would wait for my opponent's draw step, and on their draw step copy Grief, so I could draw step, get a card out of their hand, which is another very powerful interaction. So that's what's going on in the main deck of Red-Black Scam. But as far as the sideboard goes, Fatal Push is just great additional removal, especially for cards that are trying to go under us. Leyline of the Void is our Graveyard Hate, which is also something that if we draw, we can pitch to a Grief. Shieldred is like if we feel like we have to go all in on our mid-range plan, if they have a lot of interaction with us, going in on Shieldred just so that we have more just generally powerful mid-range cards in our deck is very powerful. Blood Moon is good against a lot of non-basic lands, especially decks that don't have a lot of red cards that can capitalize off of it. Remember, if we're casting Blood Moon a lot, then we need to make sure that we grab our swamps. Hitasuga Consumes All, obviously very solid against like Hammer Time. Hardened Scales is becoming more popular and things like that. Pithy Needle, against activated abilities we actually care about. Engineer Explosives is originally played because it's very good against creativity, but also decent against the same decks that we would bring in for Hitasugu, you know, Hammer Time, Hardened Scales, things like that. And then Chalice of the Void really is in our deck for Cascade decks. We can just hit Chalice for 0, and then Cascade decks have to deal with that before they get to do anything, but also decent against decks like Burn and whatnot. That is my updated Red-Black Scam deck tech. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. If you're a patron on Patreon, thank you so much, especially Brianna, who was my first patron on Patreon, which is very exciting because I launched it earlier this week. If you're interested in sideboard guides and deck techs and early videos and a bunch of other awesome stuff, you should check out the Patreon. Links are above me and in the description. Also to all other social medias like Discord, Twitter, things like that. Links are above me and in the description. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.